Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Get connected, Fitchburg. We're launching Fitchburg Connect, the city's new monthly e-newsletter that keeps you informed about all the events, services, and updates that matter to you. Get it in your inbox once a month. Sign up today to get Fitchburg Connect.
Good evening. I've always wanted to do that, hit the gavel, so thanks. This is the biggest crowd we've had in the 4 or 5 years I've been on the commission, so thanks everybody for attending. My name is David Lonsdorf. I'm the chair of the EMS Commission, and I'll call us to order. I think, Jeff, you're going to read the roll call?
I do. Kirk?
Here.
Schultz? Here. Lepper? Here. Winkers? Winkers?
Here.
Lytle?
Here.
Fusco? Fusco? Lonsdorf?
Here.
Anderson? Here. Dostalik and Anders.
All right,
We have a
thank you.
quorum.
We have a quorum. Good. Before we do public comment, we do have a new member on the commission, Mary Winkers from Fitchburg, and I wanted to give her a chance to just say something about herself.
Thank you. My name is Mary. I am the new member. I work in public health. I coordinate a maternal health program for the Department of Health Services. So I'm happy to be here.
All right, welcome to the commission. Next is public comment. This is a chance for anyone who's attending the meeting to address the commission if you wish. All right, no public comment. All right, let's get on to what you're most likely here for is swearing in a new full-time paramedic. So is this Chief, and why don't you take the lead?
Right, we'll have our 4 new medics come on up, please. Perfect, thank you. Now, I apologize, you don't have copies of this, so I'll talk slow. If you could raise your right hand, please. So I state your name. As a sworn paramedic of the Fitch-Rona EMS district, swear that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of an EMS provider. And I pledge to carry out these duties to the best of my ability. I recognize the badge of my position as a symbol of public faith and trust. And I accept this position so long as I am true to the ethics of the emergency medical services profession. I make these promises solemnly, freely, and upon my honor. Nice job. Got it. So we'll do the pinnings. We'll do them one-on-one, not all 4 at the same time. So we'll start with Sam Kisera. Thank you. I'll get it. If you want to call forth and introduce who your family member is, or who at least came to A friend that you paid in the parking lot, I guess. I don't know. Andrew Horn. Not going to bring everybody up here. That'd be entertaining. There you go. Hey. Who is pinning you tonight?
Samantha, significant other.
And next we have Alyssa Kuhn. Come on up. Face that way. Give you a badge. And who's pinning you this evening? My boyfriend, last but not least, we have Abigail Batesman.
This is my mother, Dawn.
We'll let you take your time and go ahead and leave and go get ice cream. So I can tell everyone here. Thank you for
And we're back. So it's very exciting to see 4 young new paramedics joined the crew, so good news. Speaking of good news, our next thing is the audit presentation. We have Brett and Claire, is that right, from Johnson Block? So take it away.
Is this on their screen? Oh, not yet. What you see in the screen in front of you. Let me know what you see.
All right, I think we can see that. I think we're good to go. So my name's Brett Hoffmeister. For those of you who I haven't seen me here before, I think I see a lot of new faces. I'm an audit partner with Johnson Block & Company, and we've put together a presentation kind of summary of the 2025 audited financial statements. So this is just kind of excerpts and high-level information about the audit. If you have any specific questions, feel free to jump in. We generally kind of keep these moving. I know you've probably got plenty of stuff on the agenda to get to. But so the first thing we see here is, first page is the content of the audit report. Actually, if you want to, yep, perfect right there. So this just kind of summarizes when you look at an audit of a governmental financial statement, what you'll see there. So the first thing you typically see is the independent auditor's report. We issued our audit, I believe, in April, and issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements for 2025. What that means is, in our opinion, the financial statements are in accordance with accounting principles. There's no missing information, no adjustments that weren't made. All the footnotes are properly stated. So that's what you'd want to see in an audit. That's the highest level of assurance we can give. A clean opinion is another way of saying it. That opinion covers a couple different sets of financial statements. So you've got your government-wide financial statements. Those are full accrual basis, have things like your capital assets, long-term liabilities on the balance sheet. And then we also cover your fund financial statements. So with governments, we actually have two different financial statement bases that we look at. The fund statements is more how you budget. You budget for things like capital outlay for equipment purchases, ambulances as expenditures, rather than as an asset. And then long-term liabilities, not that an EMS district typically has much of that, but things like long-term debt wouldn't normally show up on your balance sheet for your fund statements. So since that's how you budget, that's generally what we focus on in these presentations. Just that's how your resource focus is kind of looked at with your budgeted, your yearly budget. There's also a set of notes of the financial statements, contains information about significant accounting policies, significant account balances, and then there's also required supplementary information, budget to actual information, schedules covering WRS and OPEB for the local retiree life insurance fund. Accompanying an audit are some communication with the governing body, and those are just other communications that we are required to send as part of an audit. Those don't affect our opinion on the financial statements, but they are just kind of supplements that we send. One is titled "The Communication with Those Charged with Governance." It's kind of a standard letter. It goes over some more detail about the period under audit, whether there were any new accounting standards, that type of thing. Nothing really of note there. We do also look at internal controls as part of an audit. If we have any findings or things of note, they would show up in another communication. We did have one finding this year for material audit adjustments. So as part of the audit, we come in and help make some journal entries to get everything in accordance with GAAP, in accordance with accounting policies or principles. When we have those and they're large enough, we typically have some sort of finding. For small EMS districts, small governmental organizations, it's not uncommon to have that. I would say most of my clients, probably over 90% of my clients, have some sort of similar finding there. Really, it's just us helping you get your year-end balances, your accruals all in the right spot. And it's common in smaller organizations and entities because, with resource allocation, typically your funding is going to go towards your services. And the administrative side, you're hiring chiefs to deal with the EMS services, and the accounting department. It kind of wears a lot of hats, so that it's not an uncommon find. Information about your financial statements. So I'm going to go over a couple things here and then have my colleague Claire here go over a few things. But this first page kind of summarizes high level, what does your balance sheet and income statement look like for 2025. The first part of the page is your total assets, looking at the end of 2025. As of December 31st, you had about $3.3 million in total assets. Most of that was in cash and accounts receivable, typically what we see for an EMS district. About $2.5 million in cash and investments, about $650,000 in accounts receivable. Now that says net because that's net of an allowance for uncollectible amounts. With EMS districts, you have a lot of run receivables, but just the nature of the service, you don't collect all that money. So there's an allowance that's included to kind of say, all right, here's what our total receivable is, here's what we kind of estimate isn't going to be collected for the net amount. Liabilities on the next section, about $175,000. That's just kind of typical operating expenses that were incurred as expenses but aren't paid out by the end of the year. $14,000 in accounts payable, $160,000 in accrued liabilities, primarily payroll. Accrued payroll that hasn't been paid out, WRS liabilities that need to be paid in that next month. That's all pretty standard. And then the deferred inflows of resources, it's about $395,000. So this is unavailable run revenue. Another quirk of governmental accounting is to recognize revenue that has been earned. So you've done runs at the end of the year, they haven't been collected yet. To recognize that revenue, it needs to be collected within 60 days of year end. If those amounts aren't collected, we show them as unavailable. That's kind of the accounting focus is supposed to be kind of the current resources that you have available to meet ongoing obligations. So when those aren't available, and that's kind of defined as that 60-day window, we show it as a deferred inflow. So those will be recognized in the next year once they're collected. Again, that's a typical line on an EMS district's financial statements because just the nature of the entity. And then the remaining amount, your total fund balance at the end of the year, about $2.7 million. A little bit more on that fund balance kind of in the next section. One of the things we look at and one of the things we're asked about is, how are we doing? And one of the things we look at is how's your unassigned fund balance? Fund balance, and I'll show a little bit more about this on the next page, can be split into various categories. Unassigned fund balance is kind of what's available to meet your general obligations. So it's not restricted or set aside in any manner. You have just over $2 million in unassigned fund balance. Typically, we recommend that be a minimum of around 3 months. 20 to 25%, somewhere in that neighborhood. EMS districts can get away with a little bit less, but so looking at that next year's budget, you're at about 46% of the next year's budget. So the unassigned fund balance there, very healthy. So financial health of the district at the end of the year general fund was in good shape. And then the final area on this page is just a summarized income statement, shows budget to actual results for the year. So the 2025 budget had $4.8 million in expenditures in the budget for revenues and expenditures in the budget. Revenues came in quite a bit higher, about $5.6 million. A lot of that was your run revenues just overperforming, that's been an area of the last 3-ish years has generally underperformed. So that came in, I think there was some catch up there with EMSMC, the transition from billing companies there. And then grant revenues came in, I think, a little higher than normal in your general fund. And then there's also your standby services. So covering events, that has been kind of an extra source of revenue the last, probably since COVID, I would say. Expenditures were over budget by about $200,000. That was kind of various categories. I think there were some equipment purchases, payroll costs have generally been a little higher, but your revenues still came in, outstripping those expenditures. So you had an increase of about $600,000 in fund balance for the year. Page 2 then goes into a little more detail about your fund balance. So This includes the general fund, and then we have a restricted special revenue fund set up for your funding assistance program money. So this just kind of lays out how your fund balance is allocated. So you've got about $166,000 in non-spendable fund balance. That's fund balance that's in a form that can't be used to like pay off a bill or pay payroll. Prepaid items, those are things you've had cash outlays for, but the expenses are for the next period. Inventories, things you've purchased and will be consumed through your regular services. So those make up your non-spendable. Restricted funds, about $245,000. Most of that is unspent funding assistance program money. I'll note that that had a big increase kind of everywhere. Like the state just put more money into that program, so grants were, I don't know, 3 or 4 times larger than what they had been in the past. And then assigned fund balances of about $495,000. This is money that the EMS has set aside internally. So for future legal fees and employee benefits, so that's money you've set aside and earmarked. So there's no restriction on that, but you've earmarked that internally yourselves. And then the remainder is that unassigned fund balance. And now I'm going to turn it over. I apologize, I forgot to introduce Claire, who's in charge on the audit and is going to go over kind of the summary of kind of the rest of the information.
Hello, my name is Claire. I am a senior accountant. On the page that you can see, it is a snapshot of your guys' revenue for the past 5 years. You can see that the majority of it is going to come from your municipal assessments and then your charges for services, so your run revenue. Pretty standard. The municipal assessments, the big increase in that was due to the municipals getting increase for the purchase of the ambulances. And then you can see that the grant funds also increased this year due to the funding assistant money. And then if you turn to the next page, it is just a different picture to show you of the revenue for 25 and 24, just showing you what makes up the majority of your revenue. Again, it's going to be mostly your municipal assessments and charges for services, and then everything else is catch-all under the other. If you go to the next page, it's the same as the revenue, but on the expenditure sides for the past 5 years. The district typically only has the 2 categories of the EMS operating expenditures, such as payroll and just general maintenance. And then you have capital outlay, and this year it did increase due to the purchase of those 2 ambulances and then all the medical equipment that came alongside that. And then the next page is the pie charts again of just showing you a different visual of the percentages of those 2 different categories as a whole. And then the last page is just a breakdown of the ambulance run revenue and receivables. You have your gross accounts receivables, and then we factor in the allowance for doubtful accounts, the estimate of the uncollectible AR, which comes up to that net AR. And then below is just more information about bad debt and then the actual run revenue for the year.
So that kind of provides a high-level summary for the year. Like I mentioned, everything I think went well with the audit. No significant concerns from us, either financially, internal control wise. But are there any questions on anything there or anything with the audit?
I was hoping you could kind of explain, maybe for the layman, the finding related to the closeout of the previous year and some of the journal entries you had to do to try to more accurately reflect where those stood, and has that been a recurring issue, or did you see that as a one-time issue with the closeout of 2025?
Is there a specific journal entry?
It was the deficiency that you noted.
Just the general about the deficiency, nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, generally your books internally are kept cash basis for the most part. as the run fees come in, you go on your run, the information goes off to your billing company, they're doing all the collections, all the billing, and then they're just remitting cash back to you. So really, your internal financials month to month are cash basis. And so we're just helping with journal entries to get the receivables adjusted, that allowance, if it needs adjusting. Like this year, we didn't actually end up changing it because it was pretty close, accounting-wise, it didn't require any material adjustment. I think it was within like $500 of the prior year. So it's really just those going from that cash basis to the accrual basis for your financial statements. I think we've had that finding now with Fitch-Rona. We haven't typically done an audit every year. I think this is the first time we've done an audit in back-to-back years. So that finding wouldn't pop up every year because in the off years we used to do an audit and then it's called a review for 2 years, which still provides some assurance. We're still looking at the financial statements. We're still, helping with year-end close, but we're not looking at internal controls in the same way. So this would be the first time where we've had a repeat finding for that. So it's still relatively new, but Michelle, she does a good job with the day-to-day stuff, but she's not an accountant. She's not a CPA, and she doesn't have the background in some of this stuff. So that's when we're helping out with that type of activity and just getting all that stuff booked. That's where that finding often comes in.
So in essence, it's more straightforward during the course of the year to maintain things on a cash basis.
Correct.
And you don't see an issue with continuing the route we've used, which is having you all kind of provide the expert guidance on making that conversion to accrual based at the end of the year. In future years.
We see that in a lot of our clients. So yeah, with an EMS district, because you are so reliant on those cash collections, I actually think it's it's good information for you to be seeing, like, hey, what are our run fees coming in at? How is that comparing with what we're budgeting? Because you're really budgeting for that on a cash basis as well, and that can be more reflective of what is our cash position at any given time. Because like a couple years ago, when Three Rivers had all of their issues and your billing was not going out and cash wasn't being collected, that was going to be more reflective of your actual financial position rather than truing that all up to an accrual basis monthly, I think. Patrick, you'd be able to speak to that more firsthand than I would, but I don't know if you'd agree with that. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't considering that like a slight of our office manager or anything.
No,
I just
certainly not.
Generally understanding that, the approach we're using is appropriate given, the nature of the EMS district and, the need to kind of move to the accrual basis to close out the end of the year.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I have a question. Can that outperforming run revenue, this might be actually a question for the chief, but does that get factored into this year's budget planning?
Yes. So we'll talk about it more next month when we actually do the run review. But what it is it's kind of a best guess. So there's two ways I did predict future run revenue. One of those is actually taking historical data and itemizing it by resident, non-resident supplies and saying this is what this looked like in the previous year, and so this is what I expect in run revenue. And then we look at the actual real dollars of run revenue for the last 5 years and figure out what that is, and then I throw the dart in the middle.
Other questions? All right. Do you have more to discuss, or is that your?
That pretty much covers everything from us.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And if anything else, anyone else has any other questions, Chief and Michelle both know how to get a hold of us. So.
Yep. And the copy they presented, you actually would have been emailed, which is also on the website underneath all of the packets for the meeting is actually the copy of the full audit. and then some statements I think Alder Lytle was talking about, and then as well as this presentation as well. So all of that did get emailed to you, as well as it is on the website under the meeting packet for today for the general public.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. See you next year. All right. Let's go back to, we'll review the minutes from last week and see if we can approve them. Get them up here. All right. Any comments or questions on the minutes from last week, or from last month, rather? All right. Motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
All right. Thank you. Second. All right. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All any opposed? Okay. Minutes are passed. Chief's report.
Thank you. So I pulled that up again. This got emailed out to you. This will get emailed out to the rest of the municipal boards out tomorrow. Big thing where I always start to note is I always say our run volume was down last month. We were actually below 400 calls for the first time if you look at that in almost 2 years. So I think nice. I would like to say it was a reprieve, but we still, all of those calls, we actually still are seeing a lot of really sick people out there. So you'll see then that overall is down 6.4% for the year. I don't want to say it's not concerning to me at all because of last year having that huge increase in calls for 2025. So I feel like we've actually, I'll knock on wood here, I feel like we've probably actually leveled off. If last year would have been where last year normally would have been, this year is where this year normally would have been. So though we're down a little bit, I think it's just hopefully a little break in things, and we kind of have leveled off a little bit. Beyond that, you'll see the numbers out there that we normally report. Pointing out again that mutual aid to date, we had fewer trucks all out at the same time last month than we did it the last year, but I think we did still add about 6 more times that the city of Madison had to come in and help us out. And it's kind of a feast or famine. Most of those are on the same 2 days. So it was just some busy days. But we actually have had now a couple of occurrences on those days where we've had that peak time truck, where we've actually managed to keep all of our trucks in our own district with the 4 ambulances on, with 4 calls coming in at the same time. So the peak truck is serving its purpose. A couple of events, myself and Devin did the Take Your Child to Work Day here up with the city of Fitchburg, and Jeff went out to the Fitch-Rona library and did a Stop the Bleed class on it. He does a bunch of other stuff as well. I don't want to say I don't know what Jeff does, but right? He tells me what he does, and I'm like, go forth and do good things. Was this last month the one you did the class in Spanish?
We did a falls prevention class on Anton Drive in Spanish, and we have one coming up in June in Hmong and Spanish.
So I know yeah, Jeff is that good.
Yeah.
I know I completely underestimate, or not underestimate, but I miss a lot of the public things that he does, because I'm like, you need to message those me so I remember to get him on here. So that was a really cool thing that he did there in cooperation and getting our local areas and that presentations in secondary languages. So other stuff we see there, calls by the day, week, day, the hour, stuff that normally happens out there. The aging you'll see is here. That number, that over 120 days, is actually still pretty excessive. Last week, or I think it was 2 weeks ago, I did have my meeting with our monthly meeting with our person from EMS-MC. Even with that number being up there, as Brent had mentioned, we're still, you saw the numbers over the last handful of years, the switch, it was a kind of a forced switch for if anyone needs more details about switching billing companies, let me know. But the move to EMS-MC, though, was a little bit of a struggle to begin with. Our collection rate through EMS-MC is almost 10% higher than what we ever saw through Three Rivers. So the collections have been great. Still some projects to work on, but I did ask for a kind of report over what the 120 days was. Just for your information, right? There's 24 trips that are still left in there to about $21,000 that are actually still left over from they're calling it the Project Sunset. It's essentially payments. It's essentially patients who are on payment plans. Right, as long as patients are making a minimum payment a month, we don't send them to a collection agency, right? So there's people who are probably on year 3, 4, or 5 of paying $10 a month towards our bill. So there's still $24,000 sitting in there. One thing that Dina is her name, she explained there's 103 trips on there that are billed to estates. So one of the challenges we have is if even like a Medicare copay, right? If Medicare pays it, there's a copay left if patients pass away. So we will file those invoices against an estate. And that's a total of about $73,000. So there's 103 of them that are sitting out there billing to estates. I have fortunately not ever had to deal with that, but if anyone has ever had to deal with wrapping up an estate before, that can actually take a significant amount of time. Those will actually sit on our books for up to 3 years. So $73,000 is not a huge amount of money in that big picture there, but knowing that there will always be something sitting out there, unless we happen to wrap all of those out. After 3 years, it does just get written off, but that balance will sit out there for 3 years. We can change that timeline if anyone wishes to. I don't think that that's a huge amount of money, as long as we're able to explain where it is. The big one out there, right? Those two little things still leaves about $400-some thousand, narrowed down to 462 trips. There was a request then for those to go back to the review team to find out what the status of those is. I know when I get calls from patients or when we kind of stumble on things, there's calls that just kind of get stuck in this review process. Essentially, it's weird things like we might have had a wrong birth date or might have had a wrong number, that essentially they need some more hands-on work, and they just kind of get stuck in the system. And we do find them that have been in there for 2 to 3 months. So that was part of this request again for the team at EMSMC to go back and make sure that those get unstuck and figure out what to do with them. So I guess just reassuring that I did reach out to EMSMC and they are looking into why that receivables is so high. Other stuff you'll see there with our cash on hand is where it previously has been. Nothing out of the ordinary. No April donations. Our May milestones, Sarah Imhoff has been with us for 24 years. Ryan Dockery just retired with us last week, so he hit that 19-year mark. Again, he retired on May 11th, so we did a ceremony of a last page and a walking out for him. And then Andrew Jensen has been with us for 13 years. Other updates, we are just wrapped up, so I put this out a little earlier. I typed this in here a little bit early. We just wrapped up the EMS-only internship process. So this will be our 5th one. It's kind of amazing, as again, this board, thank you so much for supporting this this project was one that was started to essentially try to increase underrepresented populations in our EMS profession, as well as there's a lot of fire intern programs out there. As far as I know, we are still the only EMS only intern out there, right? People who want to be in the world, be a paramedic, but I don't want to be a firefighter. So we started that a handful of years ago. Originally, it was very targeted to try to find applicants. We only had one the first year. We only had one the second year. I got to think how many years we've been doing this now. This is the 4th year. So one the first year, one the second year. We had 2 in the 3rd year. We had 12 this year. So it was actually a pretty difficult decision to sit down and have kind of figured out we need to narrow the scope of what we're looking for, but narrowed that down to 12 people, interviewed 6, and then you'll see it's an agenda item later, looking at offering this to two paramedics this year. So phenomenal program. I have been reached out. I was reached out to, I guess, Middleton is looking at the potential of how we're funding this and running this as well, so we can get some more of these programs out there. So pretty exciting. Other shout outs, lots of stuff that's been happening in the last month since we have met. The civil unrest that occurred out in Blue Mountains, right, with our neighboring community on Saturday, that kind of spooled up pretty quick. Of Josh Crosby and Ryan Robertson was able to actually reach out to them. We had 2 ambulances out there for a handful of hours So reached out to page out crews, anybody able to come in, and those two actually came in on their day off, and we actually had a fourth ambulance in our district covering for a little while we had 2 ambulances out there. In addition to that, Oregon Fire reached out to us. They were actually able to stand up a second ambulance as well and offered to send that over to our district. So while we were getting our ambulance stood up, Oregon actually sent an ambulance over to Verona, and they actually got a call in our district while we were elsewhere. So phenomenal support for our neighbors that we're able to give and able to receive and keep our district safe. Thank you to Jamie Ennis, Michaela Quinn. I love the spring cleaning of the basement. It really affects my OCD what our basement looks like. So they were able to go down there and do some housekeeping for me. XGM, for anyone who's aware of that, has a 2-week-long spring event that we send a crew out there to. Andrew Jensen was actually able to coordinate a tour for our crews that don't go out there very often or never go out there to become much more familiar with going out there, riding bikes around, and being very familiar with where we're going out there. And then thanks to Chip and Danny for getting our bikes ready to head out to Epic this year. Those are our brand new e-bikes that I will admit, as I think I told you last fall, they're pretty fun to ride. So I went out. We don't let Jeff on them. So I actually, between myself and Devin and Jeff, we were actually out there for most every day while our crews were out there as well, kind of in a support role. So if we had crews that didn't want the bikes, I was hopping on that bike. It was a pretty fun thing to do. But thank you for all of those people, right, who the behind the scenes stuff that really help our organization function. I did send out to you as well the financial report. I can pull that up, just that really quick. We're about 32% through the year. We are about 36% above our scheduled run income. Some of that was actually a catch-up of last month's run income, finally caught up where it had been missed for the beginning of the year. So we're 36% with income and about 32% through the year. We are at about 34% expenditures, so just a little bit over that 32%. With the reminder, some of those things are not monthly payments. The example I give is we pay for our medical direction 4 times a year, so you're going to see we're paid 50% through the year, even though we're only a third of the way through the year. So that expenditures is going to be higher for those things that we're paying larger amounts that we aren't going to end up paying for later in the month. Other stuff I have noted, if I can find my right paper. On my chief's report is back to my interns. We do have one new LTE, Andrew Meisner. He actually just graduated through the UW program. No. Wow, I should have written that one down. Through the Madison College MATC program, was actually with us as a student this spring, and got our hooks into him to come start working with us as an LTE, so onboarding him. And then as far as our EMS interns go, Natalie Simic, I'm going to murder some last names. She's actually she's graduating the Verona Fire internship, and she'll actually be doing the 3rd year paramedic internship with us, so she was selected. And then Madeline Cramlett and Kiara Cherry will be our 2 first year EMS only interns. So we will get a swearing in for them either next month or the month after that. Our current interns, Kat Tausch, is actually in her field time up in Dells Delton, so she'll actually be wrapping up her class at the end of this month. And then Jasmine Garcia will be starting the paramedic program of her 2-year internship this fall. So a huge another group of young people getting into our profession. That's what I have for my chief's report. And anyone has any questions?
All right, thank you. It's great news. What is next? Let's see. It's accounts payable checks authorized. Is it? Oh, the GASB. Sorry, skipped. So the monthly process of approving the GASB.
Sure.
Can you explain what that is?
I'll explain that to you. This is for everyone who's seeing this for the first time. It's an accounting thing, which we can't do until we get the audit back. So this is the first time you'll see it this year, and then we'll see it every month here on out. What it is essentially says this board agrees with what the auditor said, right? And there's a handful of money that you're just saying that every month you are setting aside to essentially every month you're stating that we have an assigned fund balance of these dollars. Again, required by the government standards board every month, but we can't do it until I know what a couple numbers are. So from what you saw in the audit, $90,045 in non-spendable for inventory, $75,672 for non-spendable prepaid expenses. Those numbers will now not change for the rest of the year because the auditors have said that's what you owe, that's what the district has. We can't pay our bills in bandages, right? So those two numbers will not change. The other two will actually change every month. $480,320 for 53 cents in sick leave liability. So that's in our investment, that WISC account. And $21,440 is set aside every month for contract negotiations. So that number will climb. Actually, that number should stay the same now, I think, for the rest of the year. I think we've gotten all that in there. But what essentially you're doing is saying those four amounts are approved to not spend. It's really a check in the box for accountability every month. Just need a motion to approve that.
All right. Anyone like to make a motion to approve the GASB?
Motion.
All right. There's a second?
Second.
Second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. GASB is approved. Now we'll look at the payable checks. I think there's 5 pages of checks. Did anyone have a chance to look at them and any questions on them?
I do have one question, and this may just be ignorance and being new, but are the words tune-up and repair, is that just kind of a catch-all? Because like we got a $2.49, and then we also have like a $24,000. Just curious about that, I guess.
Yeah, they kind of fall into two. We have fuel. So it's like fuel and the routine maintenance, the oil changes, the tire rotations all fall under that one category. Essentially, everything else falls under tune-up and repair. So trying to think what the recent one was, we had the suspension go on 3 different trucks at the same 2 weeks. So those go away for a $23,000 repair. If I have to go buy a light bulb and a wrench, it's $2.50. Yep, that goes towards maintenance. Yeah, so it's a light bulb falls under, that's where those go.
All right, other questions or comments? All right, can we have a motion to approve the accounts payable checks?
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
Okay. So moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that's passed. Next is the MOU with the Local 311 about the permanent part-time positions that we talked about last month.
Yep, so we're bringing this back with a couple of questions and answers and things that we brought up last month. So this document was sent out again to you, updated as of earlier in this week. A couple of notes in here for corrections and clarifications. One thing is I did fix the employee status that we had in there last month that was not correct. This is actually now based on the job descriptions we did last fall. So redefining a part-timer as less than full-time hours, but still more than that 1560, which is exactly half of what a full-timer would work, right? So as it says in there, an average of 24 hours a week. That was not correct in the statement there last month. Other change that's in here, I got brought up about mandates. So the question was, right, so we're not mandating part-timers into positions, right? Because the expectation is someone who picks up this position is not going to have is going to probably have an outside job. So not mandating them back to work. Question came up, so what do we do with that position? Should we not be able to fill it? So working with the union, said what is now the expectation or the guidance from full-time staff? Will we mandate back to fill that spot? The approach, the discussion was essentially yes. part of this, the expectation or the kind of the understanding is it's from full-time staff. No, they don't want to do it, but yes, as part of the growing pains, yes, right? If we feel, which I feel, staff feels that, right, if it's important enough, we feel the need that this fourth truck needs to be in service, then we will, like every other shift we have, we will do our best to fill this with part-timers. But should we not be able to fill it with a part-timer, a full-timer would be mandated back to fill the shift. And they were understanding of that. One of the things with this as well is kind of a watch and see. This MOU will only go through the end of next year, since we will be contract negotiations again next year for the end of next year. So essentially, kind of permission for 18 months to see how this goes, to see what this looks like. If ultimately, right, and I completely understand that we have a really good understanding, right, if we're mandating back left and right to fill this position, clearly the part-time position isn't working, right? So we will have to just kind of come up with some other options of permanent part-time is not an option for effective filling of this.
I have a question real quick on that. So obviously, when planning for an absence, we would love it if an employee would give us ample notice to be able to do this.
Yep.
At what point do we cross the threshold where we don't have time to seek a part-timer to fill the spot and we just immediately go into having a full-timer? Is there a window or a threshold that we have before we approach that?
Yep. So the positions will be filled like we currently fill any position now to include the current full-time. And how that process works is employees have 30 days. If they want to use the earned time off, vacation or paid time, they can submit it to myself or the other two chiefs, right, who's ever doing the schedules, 30 days, more than 30 days out, and then we have 30 days or more to fill it with a part-timer. Anything less than 30 days, that time off is not approved. Through us, the employee has to find their own coverage, which if they successfully find, and it can't be another full-timer. They can trade, but they can't do another full-timer. They can find their own part-timer to cover that shift, and they can have the time off. If they don't give me 30 days, they don't find another part-timer, a full-timer can fill that shift if it remains open, and we fill that at 30 days. So it can be filled that way as well. So this would be open to like all of our shifts now that a full-timer could pick it up at 30 days. So we always give the LTE pool is always given that priority, but they are made aware that at 30 days, if somebody else has signed up for it, the full-timer gets it. So I think the number that what you're asking for is 30 days. And anything less than that, if it opens up less than so like a sick call or somebody calls in sick, then we work through that mandate process. So this would be filled like all the rest of our shifts. We have a phenomenal flow chart that Chip put together for us that I'd be happy to share because I share that with lots of people.
I'll skip that for now. Maybe I'll take you up on a day that I'm sick and bored at home. But yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's a logic. Yeah, it's impressive. It's a huge logic puzzle.
This is why AI will never take over the chief's position.
So that question came up last month. One of the, continuing to move down, none of these things were changed. I did work with Michelle. So one of the changes that we discussed and made from what you saw last month that I don't believe came up in a conversation is originally for health and dental, like most of the rest of the benefits we split right down the middle. So the district currently pays 88% of the premium for health and dental. So the employee pays 12%. By splitting that essentially down the middle, I chose to pick one side, which was that the district was going to pay, instead of the 88%, we were going to pay 44%, giving the employee we did talk about this, right? Because bad math, 44%. So then it was the 56% that the employee would have to pay. Looking at those numbers, that cost is really high. And that's, I don't want to say cost prohibitive, but essentially we'd have a permanent part-timer working to pay for their health insurance. Kind of chatting with Michelle, what we did instead of halving the district side of things, proposing doubling the employee side of things, making it little bit easier to chew. So instead of the employee paying 12%, the employee pays 24%, getting us down to our 78%. 22%, thank you. Yes, instead of, yes. Double, right, they're 12%. So math is still wrong on here. But it should be 24, yes, it should be 76. Yes, doubling, yes, I left the 2 in there. So it's instead of the employee paying 12%, they pay 24%. So down to 76%, not 78%. Again, there is not an in lieu of, as you see the insurance out for the full-timers. If they don't take that health insurance premium, they actually get an opt-out because it does save the district some money. They get that money in deferred comp. Because odds are a permanent part-time employee is not going to take our insurance anyway. We're not offering the opt-out, but it is, again, a little easier to bite a 78%, whatever the number was, right? The 76% instead of the 64% it was. And that's what it says here, and that's what it says here. Still left the wages out, right? Because that will just essentially will import the current tablet import the current table we have from the current collective bargaining agreement, and none of the rest of this changed. Now the big question was, how do we pay for this? Now that the audit has actually come back, we were able to know what that number was. So as Brent had shared with you, we are at a 46% of unassigned fund balance for the remainder of this year. Our intergovernmental agreement requires us to maintain an unassigned fund balance between 15 and 25%. Last year, this group decided to, and I think we put it in a resolution, if not, it was just a verbal discussion of a best practice from 25% to a 35%. So if we maintain a 35% unassigned fund balance, which is a healthy fund balance, that still gives us, so I'm just going to read this because I actually did the numbers before, right? So we have an unassigned balance of $2.2 million, $2,076,807. Our 2026 budget is $4.5 million. I even wrote it here, right? That math, right, divided as a 46% unassigned fund balance, which you saw in the audit there. Maintaining a 35% unassigned fund balance is $1.5 million. So the current unassigned fund balance of 46% minus, right, a 35% unassigned fund balance gives us $499,504 above the 35%. So it's the 45 to roughly 11%, right? The 35 to 46% that you as a commission need to redirect. So what we did last year was put some of that in the unassigned fund, in the post-retirement healthcare. We used some of that to pay out the post-retirement healthcare for retirees. We purchased more equipment for the ambulance, and we designated some of those funds, I think it was for CAR 15. So I'm giving you that seed right now that that is an amount of almost $500,000 that you as an entity need to reassign. A couple of different options for that, and I will bring that back next month to not say like, yeah, let's commit that money. Talked with talked with the finance director for the city of Verona. Like, all right, both municipalities largely don't use those funds for operational needs, because you can imagine, right, that's a slippery slope to follow down. But as opposed to using those for capital purchases in the single one-time capital purchases. Now with that, again, I will probably next month I will bring back, we have 2 people who will retire this year who will get sick time payout. As opposed to pulling money from our assigned sick time payout balance, I would propose taking it from here and not having to tap into that sick time balance. We'll talk about the next thing about adding another intern here in a moment, but back to our MOU here. So there is that $499,000 in unassigned fund balance that will potentially fund making a permanent part-time position for the next 6 months of this year. So it would, right, because it was budgeted at an LTE wage, but if we bring in permanent part-time above anything other than LTE wage, which we have one person interested now, right, that salary goes almost $4 an hour higher. So there is fund balance available for the remainder of this year. As far as the 2027 budget goes, right, because this is why we tend not to use unassigned fund balance for operational, because that puts us, I love Misty's word of the structural deficit for next year, right? You're committing funds to two people to work next year who automatically our budget is going to be higher. So Michelle actually put a very, very rough draft 2027 budget for me together, which you'll officially get next month. But even with that, on the 2027 rough draft of a budget, because love having the 4 new people in here and bringing new blood in here, but with that we actually had 2 of our, almost 3 of our highest paid employees, right, either retire or move on to other jobs, 4 of them really, right, retire, move on to other jobs or leave the service. So that is a savings now for the rest of the year, replacing them with essentially entry-level employees. So a pretty significant budget savings there. One of the things is Jeff hasn't, do you want to officially announce your retirement, or is that?
My plan is to retire November 20th of this year, so.
So Jeff has unofficially announced his retirement as well.
I'll make an
right?
official announcement probably in
Yeah.
October. Yeah.
Yes.
Daniel just said only if
It will not,
we approve it.
The budget deficit will not be a structural deficit then, it'll be much less than.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's actually a savings, right, that will come from replacing another one of our highest paid employees, right, with, though that difference is not going to be as big. There's actually a savings there as well. So with all of those changes in 4 or 5 new positions from this year to next year, there's actually already the budget and building in those positions, building in a permanent part-time position for 2 people for 2 days for next year only takes us up to a 3% increase in next year, in a rough budget increase for next year by adding those 2 positions. So couple of different options here. I know that was a lot of trying to explain and walking through how it works. Is your head exploded?
Yeah, I have a question. So
Okay.
It's a lot of, and forgive me, it's like a lot of hypotheticals that could happen. Yeah. Is the intention that next month's meeting you would have and maybe this is wrong for me to ask, but would you have a proposed budget or a proposed wish list of things on how we would spend that money or allocate that money to go towards, the next 6 months for that part-time employee, the payment of the sick time for those, like, is there going to be something that's going to be more official that kind of gives us an idea versus, it's a lot in my head right now, so I'm trying to lay all that out for what that would actually be, because there's a lot that could happen with the allocation of those funds, but what does that look like for the next month and how we do that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
The short answer is yes. There will be we haven't had an excess budget for this excessive until last year as well. Again, the call volume from last year, again, catching up with this year, and that's why it's so high. Yes, so I'll bring back a resolution next month proposing that what to assign that 35 to 40, that $499,000. Yes, largely this, that, and the other thing. So yes. So 2 parts, there's like multiple parts to yes, what I'm explaining in your question is the unassigned fund balance is there to pay for it for this year. The second part of that question is, right, where does this look like for next year? Because essentially by kind of 2 parts in good faith, by approving this MOU, right, we're saying that we're hiring these employees for this year, but December 31st, I also don't want to tell those employees they're laid off in 2027 because we decided not to budget that money for next year.
But the MOU states that we would have a run of this position for 18 months as that trial, because it would take it up to the next contract negotiation. So budgeting for the next 6 months of this year, but then from January 1st of 27 to December 31st of 2027, that would just be a part of the budget for next year and not an allocation of the $500,000.
Correct.
Rounding $500,000.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a risk that those employees would then have to then face through the duration of the 18-month trial window.
No,
Okay.
no. What you could do would be next month when I say here it is, you could say, Patrick, you need to cut the salary line by X amount of dollars, and that's going to be the first position that's going to be laid off. But in what this looks like here, and that's that very rough estimate for you of, right, roughly you're not, and you still have that opportunity next month, but any very rough estimate, our budget with those people in it next year goes up 3%. So a couple options we can approve. You can approve this MOU, right? Which in essence, I don't know that is even really committing the funds. You're just now aware that my line item for salaries by the end of the year is going to be over, and we have funds committed. We have funds available, and potentially next month can commit and assign them to that line item. You can kick this down the road for another month, but then that, and it's still not even really kicking it down the road, because though you approve my budget for submission to the municipalities, so I still get to fight this fight with the municipalities for next year. To me, it's not going to be a huge lift because it's already approved, right? The current budget is already approved for 2 days a week for the peak time truck. So really, it's not a huge lift of taking one of those positions and essentially changing the salary line for it for 1 year. Just changing it for 1 year. So I feel like it's an easy sell, but I never know.
Is this going to take up the entirety of that balance that you mentioned, the $499, likely?
Not even close.
Okay, so if we wanted to, if we had suggestions for other things to bring up, we could give you those. Okay.
Yes, 100%. Yep.
I have a quick question. Maybe this is because I'm new. Does the $499 have to get spent in this budget year, or could any of it carry over to account for that 3% increase?
That kind of segues to the next question. So one of the options per the intergovernmental agreement, one of the options of the commission is to recommend that you could take that whole amount and apply it towards the 2027 budget. The finance directors don't like that because then it sets up the 2028 budget to fail. But there is an option to do that. And I always present, because it is in the intergovernmental agreement, that the municipalities can direct the commission to direct that to be applied to the budget. So I always propose that to the municipalities because that's what I have to do, because it's part of the intergovernmental agreement. And every year, hey, please don't do that. You're just setting it for future failures. And you don't really have to, you don't have to do anything with it. It really can just sit there as a rainy day fund. Keeping in mind that we got a rainy day fund of, it's a bad word, right? But an unassigned fund balance of 45%, when truly we could be taking that fund and reinvesting it, as I'll talk about the next resolution, right? Putting it into post-retirement healthcare to help fund that in the future, putting it towards, right, is there, as I mentioned, right, when I talk with the finance directors, usually what municipalities do, alders do, is take that unassigned fund balance and use it for single CIP purchases, right? So as we're looking at, I've brought up about replacing one of our response cars that is now 16 years old, right? And I think we have kind of a good replacement option available for it. You could use that funds towards that single one-time CIP purchase. And then in big pictures would actually save the municipalities some capital expenses, and a little bit here and there without completely disrupting capital expenditures. So yeah, it gets a little in the weeds. Did that answer kind of? Yes. So yes, you can.
I had a question, and I'm sorry if I missed if these numbers were given. Do we know what the cost of putting 2 permanent part-time employees in place would be for 1 calendar year?
Stand by. Yes, I don't have that. It's on the spreadsheet that I don't have.
I'll save the question for next month then.
Estimate 100,000 each, or
I'm completely, so what I
Yeah,
could do
right.
would, I mean, I would be,
that much.
I mean, a full-timer's about, with insurance and health, WRS is probably about 130. with all the
115.
benefits.
So
115,
usually
yeah.
the municipalities, when we propose new positions, estimate a full-time employee with benefits at about 115,000. So the estimate would be half of, my math, right? The half of that 60,000 each-ish, knowing that these employees wouldn't take the full benefits. So roughly $100,000. Remembering which probably 2/3 of that is already in this year's budget at an LTE wage without benefits. So we're just making up the difference. I can find that real number for you. Again, it's in a spreadsheet that's not here.
But it's a small portion of the 499, if that's what you're wondering. Yeah.
It sounds like small peanuts, yeah.
It would be half of half.
And I'll just say something. It's generally not good for government agencies to have a lot of excess cash just sort of sitting around. I mean, the state had all sorts of extra money in the budget, and that made a lot of people mad and wanted it back. So it's good to have an unassigned balance of the 15 to 25%. It's really not good to have 40, 50% and keep accruing it, because people wonder, like, why are we paying so much money if you're not using it, really?
Is EMS one of those types of services? Like, I know school districts, if their fund balance is too high, they get dinged by their auditors. Are we one of those groups? Like, they don't want us to have that much fund balance?
I think they're indifferent.
Yeah.
We didn't ask. Yeah.
I know there's a threshold that
They don't
like,
ding you, but they always mention it.
yeah, and
I've
it's
seen that
for
in-
like the charter school I worked for. We had a 15% fund balance, and they wanted us to dinged us because they wanted it at 10%. So I wasn't sure if that was the thing.
Yeah.
No. Again, we have to have 15 to 25% based on our intergovernmental agreement. It just happens to be because we've gotten better collection rates, and we haven't raised. This will be. I'll bring it to the table next month about rate adjustments. We didn't actually even raise ambulance rates last year to meet with inflation. As Brent had said, there's so many factors that have even gotten us to having this unassigned fund balance for the second year in a row, right? Big ones being a change in billing company. The second one being a change in better billing company, actually getting more receipts from what we did. Right, a 12% increase in call volume last year. So it's just kind of been a series of events. As you saw, our run volume now, our call volume is back down. So I also don't want to hesitate to not increase run rates. And now next year, right, we're at a no fund balance. We're still at our healthy 25 to 35% or 15 to 35%. So this isn't going to be like extra money every year. It's just happened to be the second year in a row based on a series of variables that the financial position of the district is actually pretty good.
I think it was 3 years ago when Three Rivers was having all the billing problems. We were too low on the fund balance.
Yeah, the owner died,
12%.
little hiccup in Patrick's behind the scenes budgeting thing, and we were down to 10%. So the municipalities kind of helped fund some of that, some better billing practices, and have now gotten into a better situation. So it's not to say, that I can grossly overestimate what we're going to get in run revenue next year and be under, right? In which case now we are pulling from that unassigned fund balance to actually pay for operating expenses. So it just happens to be 2 years in a row where the financial wealth of the financial health of the district is actually pretty good.
It's a good problem to have.
So,
Better.
thank you. I'm maybe still a little bit behind the rest of the commission. The need that's driving the new category and is driven by the 2-day-a-week peak time ambulance for 2026, or staffing in general with the addition of the peak time ambulance?
So it's what it is. It's it's taking the peak time ambulance, which is currently staffed by LTEs, to sign up for. Largely, we started off the year, I had 2 people, right? To do that it's 2 people committing to 2 days a week. When we started the year, I had 1 person for 1 day, 1 person for a second day, and then we were guessing for them to have a partner. It worked for 2 months for one of those people and said, this isn't going to work in my life. And that person actually had to step down. They still work for us as an LTE, which then left me 1 person for 1 day a week trying to fill 3 shifts a week. I've had a second person now who can step up and it's working well for her. But it's still can be a challenge. Today's Thursday. Actually, we didn't have a peak time truck today because I only had 1 person sign up. So the truck didn't run today. And it probably looks like next week is probably going to be a similar. I don't think I have anybody in next week. So we are still very dependent on that LTE pool because we're not allowing full-timers to fill that truck. It was budgeted for LTEs. One of the drivers, or there's really 2 drivers for this. One of those is this would incentivize that position with pay and benefits. And now I would have 2 people dedicated 2 days a week to that truck. Unless they took vacation or sick time, in which case now I got to fill it. But otherwise, incentivizing them, pay and benefits, I don't want to say guarantees, but it is much more likely that that truck is going to be in service 2 days a week than what I'm currently looking at.
And so when you were referencing a 3% increase in 2027, and that's to maintain the same potential for coverage for the full year next year, or is that a change from 2 days a week to more than 2 days a week?
That is still only committing to 2 days a week. So based on putting some other numbers together here, so that would maintain 2 days a week. So that's not even increasing. I'm going to ask for 2 more days a week next year at the LTE schedule in hopes that we can do kind of how we started this year, which as much as I'm going to ask, right, we're 5 months into this. I don't want to say it's been unsuccessful. It hasn't been as successful as I was hoping it. I can ask the 2 down there. I would still say 80% of the time. Is that very liberal?
Yeah, 70 to 80% of the time, I would say. But it makes such a difference on those Tuesdays and Thursdays to have those all 4 trucks in service.
70% of the time we've been able to staff it.
Yeah.
I would say it's successful. Mm-hmm. So I'll ask again for that funding for next year. As our current operation, it'll come in at that lower amount at an LTE wage, while committing to 2 days a week that we know we'll have staffing. And we'll have 4 trucks in service.
And so I know you're probably uncomfortable saying the 3% is what the number is going to be. I was just curious, 3% of our increase in the salaries and benefits budget, or this alone would increase our operating budget by 3% for 2027?
This plus all of the other anticipated increases.
Okay.
So this is Michelle working through what I'm presenting to you next month with throwing some additional personnel in there. It still needs the fine tooth to it, but that 3% already includes the anticipated budget increases for next year. So that is actually worked through the 21 employees plus myself and Devin and Michelle's. We know what the employees are getting for raises next year because it's contractual. We can guess what the non-representatives will do based on historical. So wages are already built into this for next year. So this is already, right, the hope is that if we nailed this, you'll see 3.1% next month.
Good. I was under the mistaken impression that, if this were enacted, this would immediately drive a 3% increase in the overall budget for 2027. And caught me as something kind of more impactful than we'd maybe want to take action on tonight, but the context is really helpful.
Yeah, and I said largely most of that came from 4 senior medics retiring or moving on and being replaced by 4 brand new people.
All right, good discussion. Other comments or questions?
I'll move approval with the amendment of changing the 78 to 76%.
All right. Second, anyone?
I'll second.
All right. So moved and seconded. No further comments. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. The memo passes.
Okay, it still
As
needs to
approved.
be ratified by 311.
Yeah.
Yep. They have this. It's been discussions with the union steward, so I don't anticipate any additional changes to it. But I will absolutely send it off to them for signature. If there's any issues, it'll just come back next month. If they're okay with it, the intent and the planning of this was to implement this potentially as soon as June 1st. So I will keep you informed where that goes.
All right, great. We've got one more business item. It looks like, speaking of unassigned fund balance, assigning some of it to the paramedic internship.
Yep. So I'm already asking for some of that $499,000. So where, as I mentioned, right, that we had 12 applicants for our EMS internship, which is phenomenal, right? And we had lots of really good candidates for it, but really found two candidates that I truly think will shine for us. And I think are, as I've talked about, right, reinvesting funds back into the service, into the district, into the profession. I think this is a really good opportunity to do that. We have budgeted, so our paid paramedic, we have our unpaid paramedic intern, which Natalie, right, in her 3rd year at the fire department. So we have 2 intern tracks. When they come from the fire department, we supplement their tuition, but then they're considered volunteers with us. They're actually partnered with a mentor. They ride with that mentor 2 days a week, unpaid for their time for us. So their time is actually the education we give them, but we do support their tuition. The other program, our EMS internship, is actually a paid position, but they are actually limited in hours. So they're given 96 hours a month. They are also partnered with a mentor, but they're given 96 hours a month to sign up and do with kind of as they please. That 96 hours is because anything more than that puts them in state retirement, which I'm sure an 18-year-old would love, right? But that adds 13% to the cost of all of this stuff. So they are capped at 96 hours, and we supplement their tuition. So there's kind of a trade-off in the 2 different programs. That money is budgeted, right? So that actually is in the salary line item for 1 intern for 96 hours a month for 12 months, as well as at the bottom, you'll see that paramedic internship program. I think we have $12,000 or $10,000 in there, right? It's $2,500 per intern per semester, plus some books and stuff that we can pull out of FAP funding, but that pays for 2 interns, in addition to our fire intern. And then we always have 2 EMS interns because we start 1 new one every year, and they're with us for 2 years and rotate through. So with the opportunity to get a second intern in this year, I've done the math. It's not up there, but you should have gotten emailed it to you. For the second part of this year, so that student would start in July through the end of this year. So 96 hours a month for 6 months, plus tuition, and 96 hours a month for all of next year, plus 2 months of tuition, is a whole $35,000. I worked with the finance director of this as well because there is an option to put this to put it into a budget for 2027. My thought is using what we've got right in an unassigned fund balance to actually sponsor this student because as I mentioned, right, it's not a great idea to continue to use unassigned fund balances for operational things that keep going in perpetuity when we don't know what that unassigned fund balance will be. So in this case, right, this would actually be a finite time frame. So this would be this last 6 months of this year and the 12 months of next year, then essentially this ends. Now there is 1 more semester where the student would be with us, But that does give us an option, should we have an unassigned fund balance again that is above our minimums next year, we can use it to pay for that fourth semester for that student. If there's not, it's in the budget for 2 interns. So if that money is not there next year budgetarily wise, we would actually just not bring on another intern that year and use the budgeted funds to pay for that program in the year of 2028. So there's a limit, right, to what we're using the unassigned fund balance for here. And this number is actually not in the budget. And what I got explained to me is this will be a weird thing of what you'll actually propose and present next month is actually an unbalanced budget. Because this is actually taking money that's there but not really there because it's not income, but it's income. So what happens is essentially in the salary line item, and you end up with an unbalanced budget by $35,000. There's a little asterisk at the bottom that says Patrick has got $35,000 he's planning on making this difference up with. And it won't be quite that much because this is for the 6 months of this year, if that makes sense. And I'll explain that all again next month if you decide to move forward this. But it would be $35,000 to take that under that unassigned fund balance. We do actually have a second set of paramedics who are interested in taking an intern. So we do have the staffing commitment to essentially this would be 4 interns really, because we've got 1 more in her second year, one of our fire interns, plus the 2 that we'd be bringing on. So we actually do have 4 crews who are dedicated and interested in taking on an intern. So there is staff availability, staff commitment to this, and we have $400,000 in unassigned fund balance that's looking for some reinvestment. So what I would be asking for you is from $35,000 for that to bring on a second intern for the next, paid for at least with this for the next 18 months, knowing that there is the ability to fund it from a normal operational budget in semester 4.
I was going to move to approve it.
Second.
Sorry, I beat you to it.
Sorry. You moved to approve it?
Yeah.
Okay. Second. All right. So we have a resolution 2026-02, assignment of unassigned fund balance to paramedic internship, moved and seconded. Any further comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Wow, thank you. That's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
The interns that we have currently and in the past have been very successful. In fact, Molly Olson was our first paid intern. She's a full-time employee with us. And I can anticipate probably at least 2 of the interns we currently have that potential as well. And the 2 that we're bringing on certainly are going to succeed. And it brings us up to the same speed of what the fire departments have been doing with paid internships. And it really shows your commitment to the profession, which is hard to get young people into the profession, and especially the underserved that don't want to commit to this profession. So thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff.
And if I could add one more thing, our staff is really, really excited about this. And the fact that we keep having crews that step up and see the success that other crews are having with that mentorship, just it kind of fills your bucket to see people say like, hey, I'd really love an intern. And to see how that mentorship goes over the course of 2 years is pretty incredible. And people take a lot of pride in saying, that was one of mine. A lot like a lot of our staff that are also faculty at the college who take pride in saying, that was my student. So from that standpoint, we're really excited. So thank you.
That's great. I was involved in training doctors for 10 years for the university, and I'll agree with all of what you said. The opportunity to train younger people in your profession goes all the way back to the Hippocratic Oath. Like it's a long, long tradition in the medical field. So, all right. Other business as allowed by law. Anybody have any other comments?
I was going to say happy EMS week. We should have done that at the beginning, but
Oh, that's right, I forgot.
it is. Oh, did
This
I,
is
did I
big
beat
letters
you?
on my agenda. And I forgot to start with that because we had a lot of
I
people
do have
here.
the T-shirt on, so I was
there we go.
supporting
Okay.
this year's motto.
Scott will close up in on that, or Sydney will close up in on.
Forgot flowers or candy or something for you guys.
I will share that. Thank you, Jake and Patrick, for both cities did actually do proclamations last week for EMS week in recognition. So thank you to the municipalities to supporting that.
All right.
I will also I'm sorry, one quick, just noting next
reminder,
meeting,
yeah.
the reminder, for our next meeting. So our next full commission meeting will be that third Thursday of June, which I think is June 18th. I've got chicken scratching down here, but I didn't read the rest of them. And then the reminder that we do have a special commission meeting on June 3rd. That is a Wednesday at 6 p.m. back here. More information to come regarding that. It does have to be, because it'll be predominantly in closed session. So
Yeah,
yes.
if you could please put that on your calendar, it's really important for the commission to be here.
Does everybody, just getting ahead, can everybody think they're going to be able to make that? Yes. Okay, good. So we'll have a quorum. All right, move to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second, all right, we're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.